fraud. While the global warming alarmists have done a good job of spreading fright, they haven't been so good at hiding their real motivation. Yet another one has slipped up and revealed the catalyst driving the climate scare. We have been told now for almost 3 decades that man has to change his ways or his fossil fuel emissions will scorch Earth with catastrophic warming. Scientists, politicians and activists have maintained the narrative that their concern is only about caring for our planet and its inhabitants. But this is simply not true. The narrative is a ruse. They are after something entirely different. If they were honest, the climate alarmists would admit that they are not working feverishly to hold down global temperatures. They would acknowledge that they are instead consumed with the goal of holding down capitalism and establishing a global welfare state. Have doubts? Then listen to the words of former United Nations climate official Ottmar Edenhofer. One has to free oneself from the illusion that international climate policy is environmental policy. This has almost nothing to do with the environmental policy anymore, with problems such as deforestation or the ozone hole, said Edenhofer, who co-chaired the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Working Group on Mitigation of Climate Change from 2008 to 2015. So what is the goal of environmental policy? We redistribute de facto the world's wealth by climate policy, said Edenhofer. For those who want to believe that maybe Edenhofer just misspoke and doesn't really mean that, consider that a little more than 5 years ago he also said that the next World Climate Summit in Cancun is actually an economy summit during which the distribution of the world's resources will be negotiated. Mad as they are, Edenhofer's comments are nevertheless consistent with other alarmists who have spilled the movement's dirty secret. Last year, Christiana Figueres, Executive Secretary of UN's Framework Convention on Climate Change, made a similar statement. This is the first time in the history of mankind that we are setting ourselves the task of intentionally, within a defined period of time, to change the economic development model that has been reigning for at least 150 years, since the Industrial Revolution, she said in anticipation of last year's Paris Climate Summit. This is probably the most difficult task we have ever given ourselves, which is to intentionally transform the economic development model for the first time in human history. The plan is to allow third world countries to emit as much carbon dioxide as they wish, because, as Edenhofer said, in order to get rich one has to burn coal, oil or gas, while at the same time restricting emissions in advanced nations. This will, of course, choke economic growth in developed nations, but they deserve that fate as they have basically expropriated the atmosphere of the world community, he said. The fanaticism runs so deep that one professor has even suggested that we need to plunge ourselves into a depression to fight global warming. Perhaps Naomi Klein summed up best what the warming the fuss is all about in her book This Changes Everything: Capitalism versus the Climate. What if global warming isn't only a crisis? Klein asks in a preview of a documentary inspired by her book. What if it's the best chance we're ever going to get to build a better world? In her mind, the world has to change, or be changed because an economic system, meaning free market capitalism, has caused environmental wreckage. This is how the global warming alarmist community thinks. It wants to frighten, intimidate and then assume command. It needs a crisis to take advantage of, a hobgoblin to menace the people, so that they will beg for protection from the imaginary threat. The alarmists' better world is one in which they rule a global welfare state. They've admitted this themselves.